Welcome, everybody. Good afternoon. You all have seen the media advisory that as of 2:31, our second sample was cleared, tested negative, and so minutes after that, we issued a media advisory and a Richmond Ready alert stating that the boiled water advisory was lifted. For everybody, what that means is that no longer a need to boil water, that normal consumption can take place. No flushing is needed of your pipes or any ice or anything that was previously stored, because all of the testing has been negative. Since the boiled water advisory is lifted, Dr. Morris has been looking into the causes of this event. And in his initial assessment, his team's initial assessment recognizes that there were delayed maintenance activities in our sedimentation basins that led to the clogging of these filters. So I'm going to invite Dr. Morris up to talk more specifically about what that means, what actions he's already put in place to prevent that going forward, and then we can both take questions after that. Dr. Morris.
Good afternoon, everyone. So in reference to delayed maintenance activity in the sedimentation basins, it's in reference to the plate settlers in the basins and the cleaning that needed to take place for that. During the treatment process, alum builds up on those plates, as in turn being alum sludge. And as time progresses, that builds up more and more as time goes on. And then subsequently, they need to be cleaned off. Now, maintenance activities have to occur on a reoccurring basis in a timely fashion. Otherwise, there's a high potential that alum sludge could release and get put back into the water. And then that's what happened during this time period. The alum was released, and then subsequently, due to that in conjunction with some poor water quality, raw water quality, that clogged the filters, and which indicated that they had to take the filters offline, do additional backwashing, and then bring the plant back up. That takes time. One of the items that we did to address this concern is change the protocols associated with how those plate settlers are done. Normally they're done on an on-demand basis. That means an operator would go in and say, it's time to do the cleaning of that basin. We've subsequently changed that to a preventative maintenance item, which means that on a reoccurring basis, those basins are going to be cleaned. And so that schedule we set up right now is a weekly schedule that goes through sequentially each of the basins. There's about 4 basins that this entitles to or references to. So I'll give you an example. Week 1, you would clean basin 1. Week 2, you would clean basin 2. Week 3, you would clean basin 3. Week 4, you would clean basin 4. And then week 5, you would revert back to basin 1. And then we're also going ahead and looking at the amount of maintenance items we have, both in the corrective and preventative item. Our contractor or a consultant engineer is going to go through and look at all the maintenance activities we have and see if there's any additional ones we need to add, any additional ones that are corrective in nature that we want to consider to be preventive in nature. And then we're going to go through and update our maintenance protocols to ensure that those activities are going on a reoccurring schedule. We're also looking at the potential to optimize higher performance in our filters and also look at what areas can we do to improve response times. So even when we go through and we look at the standard times needed to do a backwash on a filter, maybe those can be reduced, enhanced, changed in a way to further enhance or have a higher degree of response when you have to do a backwash in an emergency sequence. One of our engineers is going to go through and look at that and then produce a technical memorandum that we're going to assess and maybe incorporate some operational changes to address those issues, both on an efficiency perspective from our filters, but also in a response protocol for emergent conditions. So that's basically how we've handled this and did our response. Do you want to open up the questions?
Yeah, I'll just say one more thing, which is to the people of Richmond, we recognize that this has been a really challenging event on the tails of other challenging events with water, and just know that we are super committed to figuring out what the core root cause issues are and addressing those issues. And we know that we are an old city with old infrastructure and that we are going through a period of pretty rapid change in terms of people, in terms of systems and processes. And that is going to come with some bumps in the road. And so I'm really grateful for Dr. Morris's efforts to not only bring in new staff to build up a new team, but also to address a lot of the long-standing issues with systems and processes. And so I want to thank everybody for their grace and patience with this event, and know that we are going to do everything we can to prevent another one from happening. But there's obviously ongoing work to do with our water system. All right,
We're
let's
going to
go to
start
questions.
here. Cameron?
Since you won for outlet, I refer to Tyler
Okay.
over there.
We'll go.
So as far as you mentioned these filters, are you looking at bringing in new filters, replacing them, looking at higher technology? What's the situation there? Would that result in new costs for ratepayers?
Yeah, so we do already have an existing filter rehab project that's on the books already. It's included in our CIP. I believe it starts in end of FY 26, early FY 27. That's the planned duration of that. What that entails is going in and looking at any type of valve replacements, walls, concrete walls assessment, and then also replacing media as warranted. At this time, we're not looking at further enhancements to the filters. They're designed to handle the rate of flow that they have. We're more akin to looking at what changes can we do in the way that they function to see if we can get enhanced performance out of it. Normal process flows, they already have high performance, but we're more willing to look at, in an event where you need to do a quick recovery, what are systems you can put in play to do a more quick recovery, a higher enhancement protocol. Understanding that when a filter goes down, it takes a lot of time to do a backwash sequence. And right now when you're trying to do a recovery, when there's high demand on the system, every minute counts, and you want to make sure that if you have to ever go back and do a multiple filter backwash in a simultaneous manner, that you save all those minutes and make sure that you get the quickest response as possible.
Can you repeat the question?
The question that was put forth was, knowing that there was issues with the filters, was there any plan to do any capital improvement project to enhance the performance of the filters or new technologies with the filters?
Okay, sorry. I have a question for you. So you changed your protocol on how you're going to handle the backwash of the filters and not. You just listed those. Is there anything else that you feel needs to be done in the water treatment plant to ensure nothing else happens? We don't go through another boil water advisory, something doesn't malfunction. You know what I'm saying? Like, what other things need to be fixed, and how are you addressing that?
Yeah, no, most certainly. The question asked was, knowing that we've already set up some protocols for the filters, and we've already set up some protocols for communications, which we just went through again. Very happy in the response that we did after those protocol changes, communications. Vastly different experience in the communications. But are there any other unforeseen issues that warrant looking into and investigating as a part of condition assessments on the water treatment plant? We've gone through and done some very robust condition assessments. You can go back and look at VDH's report. You can also look at some of our HNTB reports and our own independent condition assessments. Those always identify assets you need to do, maintain. The question is when do you engage in doing that upgrade? One thing that we noticed in this pool water advisory is that one zone went down quicker than the other. And so one item that we can look at from that assessment is seeing, do we have adequate storage in that zone? That's something we're going to look at in an engineering report to check to see, is that effective? Another conversation could be, based on our regional partners and their ability to store in their system, maybe we talk with them on joint storage options and seeing if there's any capacity there. The council members have already, at the last GovOps talked about, we do have Bird Park Reservoir, which we are doing our rehabilitation on. We already have a construction project that's in place for that. Half the capacity of that reservoir was down. In the event that had been at full capacity, the pool water advisory that we did today, or most recently, would not have occurred because you would have had additional capacity in the system. But we have to maintain those infrastructure. We have to do those steps to ensure that we have that capacity in the future. But we are going to look at what additional options we need to put in place. Those are going to be ongoing. So as time progresses, we go through assessments on an annual basis to add new projects, to add new rehabilitation issues to be addressed. And then we go through the rate setting process to ask for a rate that's sustainable to add those new projects on. Administration, the council members, they've all been supportive of those projects to date. I'm happy to report that I wish that that would continue to go forward, and as we identify new projects that may need additional financial support, that those will be incorporated into rates and approved by City Council.
Mayor Avula, for Richmond residents sitting at home, maybe watching right now, who might be frustrated, rolling their eyes a little bit, trust is severed, what do you have to say to those people?
Yeah, the question is, what do I have to say to Richmond residents who are frustrated and who are distrustful of our local government? And yeah, I mean, that I live here. I understand what everybody's going through. I share the same frustration. And, the job that I've signed up for is to try to strengthen this local government and rebuild trust. And that's going to not be something that happens overnight. It's something that is going to take probably years to build the right culture and to build the right systems and processes. And that's not an excuse, it's just a reality of what real culture change in City Hall is going to require. And in the meantime, we need to do everything we can to strengthen up issues of core critical infrastructure, and to like really anticipate what future challenges may exist, and try to head them off at the pass. But my attitude coming into this role has been, we're not going to shy away from the problems of City Hall and of this city. At every turn, we're going to look for things, we're going to find them, and we're going to fix them. And that is going to be the story of my next 4 years of this seat. And that's going to come with a lot of things that we find, but it is the job that I've been tasked with to address those. And so I'm really committed to doing that.
Can you all explain what you mean by delayed maintenance? I guess in as much detail as you can. Is this like one time where something's fell through the cracks? Is it something that built up over a matter of months or years? And did it have anything to do with the recent staff changes that happened at the plant around this time?
So the question at hand is, can I further enhance or explain on what deferred maintenance means? Did it have an impact on changes to the plant or any personnel changes? First and foremost, I'm not going to talk about personnel matters in an open forum. But for deferred maintenance, I explained slightly on this, but the maintenance was a corrective action maintenance request, which means as the operators identify the need to do the cleaning of those plate settlers, then that would initiate a work order that would be put into maintenance, and then they would go out and clean those items. The basin in question here was not cleaned since March, and so that is a prolonged period of time that would not be appropriate, in my opinion. And we have changed that based off the preventive maintenance schedule we propose to do that every 4 weeks to ensure that that does not happen again.
Do we know why it wasn't cleaned since
We're gonna go on next. We'll cover it.
One of the things that came out of this is revelation that the oxidation system is also down. Are you able to say how many systems in the water treatment plant are down since the water crisis in January?
The question is one of the concerns was brought up about the oxidation system being down, and then could we affirm on what other systems may have been down since January? I'm going to speak to the system in play where you're talking about right now is an oxidation system. It's potassium permanganate, and so that in and of itself is what you use for like magnesium, iron removal, or organics. That's been down since December, so that's an item that's been taking off. That system in and of itself is usually done primarily to move iron or magnesium from the system. It was taken down because it wasn't needed. That's an auxiliary system. It's not a primary system. And when you use a system like that, there's instances where it gets prone to clogging. So in order to bring that system back up, we're going to have to do a system flush, look at the pumps, and based off what we need to do at the plant, that system needed to be bringed up because we did not have an issue with iron or magnesium. And so that was a low priority repair. And question on what systems do we know, critical repairs that need to be done at the water treatment plant based on critical assets. One of the items that we identified from the HNTV report was going through and getting a hierarchy of updates on critical assets. Subsequent to that, we've gotten with the maintenance supervisor at the wastewater treatment plant and the water treatment plant who oversees both of those. And I have a monthly report that comes to me and the other executive leadership team members, and we get to review the status of assets, pumps, pipes, valves that are out of commission, and the status of those repairs, which it could be that you're waiting on a part, the manufacturer has the delay in shipping, it's been 2 weeks out, 1 month out, 6 months out. But the status of that report allows executive leadership at DPU to get a little bit more viewpoint into the way that the maintenance items are going on to make sure that if we need to interject, we can. Sometimes there just needs to be a little bit more pressure on the manufacturers or just trying to emphasize that this is a high priority repair and that we need to get something more quickly. And so that gives a little bit more insight on what needs to be done to the facility.
Hello, thanks for taking our questions. So what you're saying is the root cause of this latest water issue is of course what we reported on yesterday with that work order and the maintenance request regarding the plate settlers, which was delayed. If you'll recall, that work order stated that someone in the operations department stated it wasn't a good time to clean the plates. I'm wondering who made that decision, why did they make that decision, how will you hold that person accountable considering it led to yet another water crisis? Are you confident in the leadership of the people who are running the plant?
So the question is that the work order that's in reference is a work order that identified that the maintenance was deferred, and in reference I think it was a May 12th work order, is that correct?
Yes.
That work order stated that the maintenance was deferred because operations did not feel comfortable moving forward with the work order. And then what was that cause, and what practice have we put in place to rectify that in general speaking?
To hold them accountable.
Yep. So first of all, again, I'm not going to speak to personal matters in an open and public forum. We do have high accountability on when we make changes in the process. We have instituted somebody that I have a high degree of respect for, Tony Singh. That's my new senior deputy over operations. He is housed right at the water treatment plant. That's a new change. Never before have we had an executive leadership from DPU housed right at the water treatment plant. And his job and his roles in taking on that initiative is to go through and do routine inspections, routine investigations, and trying to improve the overall functionality and accountability at the water treatment plant. This was one of the items that we addressed both in the H&T report, but also in VDH's subsequent report as well. We feel that instituting a executive leadership team member on site and having that constant viewpoint into the operations of that facility will aid in those discussions. But back into the option or the decision to do the cleaning at a particular time or not, when it is a corrective action, they kind of shuffle that to a lower priority. It's a judgment call when you need to do that. Switching it to a preventative maintenance item on a routine basis removes that judgment call per se. And so we feel very confident in the fact that once I switch this to a preventive maintenance item rather than a corrective maintenance item, it removes that level of judgment that you need on making, does it need to do it today? Does it need to do it tomorrow? Can it hold a week? Can it hold 2 weeks? That removes that judgment completely. We establish the protocol and the time sequence now, and then we hold everybody accountable to that sequence.
So was that the right judgment call at the time?
We're gonna keep going down the line.
Hi, thank you again for sharing with us. Can you explain the alum sludge buildup exactly, like why that is used to help clear the filters and what can happen if it's misused? Can it have an adverse effect and actually create a gluey substance that would block the filters? And is that something, how often are those applications, the alum applications applied to keep the water flowing smoothly?
Yeah, so alum in itself is a coagulant, and which means that it takes small particles and makes them larger particles when they hit each other and sticks them together. If you overdose alum as any chemical, it creates an issue. The water in excess is toxic per se. And so the intention behind that is to dose appropriately to get the particles large enough so they get captured in the media when they go through the filters, but not large enough so they're causing issues. Also, underdosing alum can also have the reverse effect, which you don't actually get any type of filtration, you still have some level of turbidity in the effluent. The alum in itself, when you dose it, that sludge is going to settle out, those particles, and they are going to accumulate over time. That's why there's a need to go through and do the cleaning efforts to remove that from the system, so that it doesn't get dislodged and go into the filters.
Yeah, keep it moving. Go ahead.
With me? Okay. So in your experience, are these back-to-back issues that we've had this year normal for a water plant like Richmond's? And as a follow-up to that, have you been in conversations with other city water plants around the country who might have experienced similar issues, like Atlanta, for example, on what to look for so these issues don't happen again?
The question at play was, based off the incidents that have occurred over the last several months, have we looked into other municipalities or localities nationwide to see if there's any actions that they could look at, recommendations on what to look for to address these concerns? The short answer to that is no. I haven't reached out to any particular locality directly. I have done additional research and discussions with our engineers and determined what would be the most appropriate actions. And based off those, we've structured a lot of the changes in DPU around being more robust, being more accountable, trying to bring in expertise where warranted. There's been a lot of structural changes in the organization as a whole. We stood up the water engineering group. That engineering group has a new senior deputy that's in charge of it. They're responsible for ensuring that our engineering projects stay on task, on schedule, and we hold our project managers accountable for those same actions, making sure that we don't have deferred capital improvement projects. They stay on target. One item that was identified is just the general oversight. Previously, the deputy in charge of water operations had a multitude of divisions under him. And that multitude of divisions ranged from the sanitary sewers, flood walls, distribution, collections, pre-treatment, water resources, water treatment, wastewater treatment, and then that is a lot of oversight. We agree if you have to look at a lot of things, it makes it very hard for you to focus in on critical needs, right? So one of the things we changed with that was to structure that so that there's two entities that are on top of all that group. So we split the duties and responsibilities so that you can have a more focused effort in the tasks that you're assigned, right? And then furthering on that, we brought in expertise. Like we want to make sure that we have the people we need when we need it. We've restructured the water treatment plant to add in additional staff on a day-to-day basis. And we also brought in staff on, like I mentioned before, Tony Singh, to be right on the facility, to have eyes on the ground on a day-to-day basis, to check on how the status of equipment is doing, how the plant is operating, but to get that one-on-one kind of viewpoint on a day-to-day basis. We've structured a lot of our departments to have that executive leadership embedded on those satellite locations to make sure that they have boots on the ground, eyes on the workforce, to make sure that we hold ourselves accountable, and two, that we can see anything coming up before it becomes an issue.
So would you say that this is not normal, like back-to-back issues aren't usually normal for a water plant like Richmond's?
Back-to-back issues normally is not atypical. Boil water notices do occur. That is something that occurs routinely nationwide. You can go look at the statistics. I believe last year or the year before, there's about 7,000-ish boil water notices on a nationwide basis, but I have to go back and don't quote me on that number because I'm trying to go from memory. But those items do occur. And the reason those occur is a plethora of items can go wrong at a treatment plant. As the mayor referenced, we're in a building year. We're going through and assessing what we need to do, improve on that. There's going to be hiccups along the way. I will never guarantee that nothing will ever happen again. That is not something you can guarantee. Infrastructure fails. If you don't do maintenance on your car is going to break down. I have to do maintenance here. If I don't do that maintenance and we defer the maintenance, there's a high likelihood that you could have an incident. And even if you do everything perfectly, you can still get a flat tire. And so in those instances, we need to make sure that we have those response protocols set up so we minimize the event. We minimize the potential to have service interruptions. We minimize the impact to the community. So we plan for those events in the event that they do occur, and we respond very quickly to those events. But never will there ever be no incidents in the history of the city of Richmond. That's wishful thinking if that was ever to occur.
Okay. All right. What's that?
Follow-up?
We need to go. Do one or two. All right, we'll take one or two. Yeah.
So I'm just, who would typically make the call on whether or not to do the type of protective maintenance you're talking about? Would that be the plant superintendent, or would that be whoever happens to be on duty when the order comes in?
Yeah, the question is who makes the call for when to do maintenance items? The way that the system's set up is maintenance discusses with operations, and they make a decision together. And so that supervisor over maintenance would discuss the plan maintenance activity with the supervisor on shift, or ultimately the chief operator as well, or the plant superintendent. Either one of those would have a discussion with that maintenance operator and maintenance technician to figure out if they need to do the maintenance or not. So it could be a plethora of those combination of individuals.
Are you able to say or disclose who, or at least the title of the person that made this decision not to clean the plates?
Yeah, the question is I'm able to disclose who or the title of the person that made this decision. As I mentioned before, I'm not going to discuss personnel matters. I will hold the individuals accountable. You can rest assured of that, but I will not discuss personnel matters.
Do we know that person's rationale for why they chose not to do this maintenance?
I think, yeah.
Yeah.
That-
I mentioned it before. I'm not going to discuss personnel matters with
But
any.
this is
Yeah.
not, this
I think-
personnel matter
yeah.
affected a whole lot of city neighborhoods. I don't understand why